Greetings of the day, everyone, and welcome you all to the second episode of FIC Charcha, a one-stop destination for all your business, finance, and most of all, entertainment needs. This is a podcast series by Finance and Investments at Arrowhead College, sponsored by Uniline Energy India and Delhi School of Communication. This is your host Anisha Kalita, and I hope you all are doing well. This podcast is especially for all those people who are stuck at their homes, bored, uninspired, and demotivated. This episode will not only inspire you, but will also entertain and motivate you. So without any further ado, let me quickly introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Nikhil Kamath. Mr. Kamath is the youngest billionaire in the country. He, along with his brother, co-founded India's largest brokerage platform, Zerodha. He is also the co-founder and chief investment officer of the asset management company TrueBeacon. In this episode, we discuss about his childhood and how he became a trader. He also talks about how young entrepreneurs should raise finance and how Zerodha plans to compete with up-and-coming brokerage companies. A lot more in this exclusive episode with Mr. Nikhil Kamath. And now, with all the enthusiasm, I would like to introduce Simran Mehta, our associate member, to start with this episode. So grab a snack and
Welcome to FIC Charcha. A very warm welcome to you, sir. It is a pleasure talking to you. I'm Simran Mehta, an associate member of the Finance and Investment Cell. So let's start off with a very basic question. How's the lockdown period been for you?
Well, much like everyone else, I think, it's been quiet, it's been dull, sad. Many people in my first circle are kind of infected and not doing too well. It seems to have gotten exponentially worse in the last maybe 15 days. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but, for the first time, there are people I know who are dying and stuff like that. So it's terrible.
Yes, absolutely. And we hope your family is healthy and well, and so are you. So we're hoping for the best. So give us a peek into your life. What does a regular day in the life of Nikhil Kamath look like?
Well, on weekdays, it's fairly routine. I start work at about 8 in the morning, so I wake up at 7. Work goes on till 9 p.m. maybe or 8 p.m. and try to get a workout and go to bed. In a pre-lockdown world, I liked playing football and sport and stuff like that, which you can't do anymore. But weekends, when there's no curfew, I catch up with some friends, have them come home, and have a drink, talk to them. Yeah, very generic.
Very generic. So do you have a morning go-to drink? Like, how do you start your morning?
I'm not an alcoholic, Simran. I start in the morning.
No, I meant like a cup of coffee or green tea, probably.
Well, I think I have green tea in the morning, yeah.
Green tea. That's a healthier choice. Okay, so tell us about your formative years. You took a bold step of dropping out of school at 14. How does this teenager who's interested in chess goes on to become India's youngest billionaire? And what inspired you to start a fintech startup?
Well, a large portion of it is luck and timing and all of that. One of the main reasons why I dropped out was not chess or business or any of that. It was the fact that I was terrible at academics. I was not a good student. I got horrible marks and I wouldn't have done very well if I continued on that path. Many factors which led me to stop formal education, chess being a part of it. I'd started playing very early in life when I was about 5 or 6. And it kept, graduating from one level to another level. And I attempted to turn professional for a while. I used to also have a business which used to be, selling cell phones when I was very young, 14, 15, which was actually doing quite well. So I stopped based on a bunch of factors. 15 to 16, I did that. 17, I got a job at a call center here in Bangalore. We used to sell accidental health insurance in the UK. Started trading at the age of 17. Trading led to managing money for friends and family, led to being a sub-broker. We started our broking firm in 2009. I was about 23 years old then. I was about 22 years old then. Sub-broking led to broking then led to being an NBFC and kind of laterally growing into, venture capital. We run an incubator. A lot of the stuff we've been doing in the last year or two has been more around climate change and stuff like that. But again, everything is a factor of chance and timing, and I try to keep things as organic as I can. If an opportunity presents itself, I would be happy to do it. But I've never had like 5-year plans in life. Each time I did have a plan, it did not work out. So now I'm like, let's just stay watchful, hear what is happening, and do the best you can.
Well, life anyway happens while we're busy planning. So I think it's a good decision that you did not have any plans. So one of the things one of the major problems that budding entrepreneurs face in a startup is arranging finance. And personally say, if I have a business plan today, the only question is going to be who is going to fund that. Will my parents be able to do that? Or will my company be able to generate enough funds? And all these things kind of make a person underconfident and scared of the future. So how did you have the vision and how were you confident to initiate and to do something of your own?
I think the entire premise is flawed. If you're starting a business today in an online ecosystem where everything can be made, organized, and sold very easily online, I don't think funding should be your main worry. Most startups waste too much time thinking about funding, but they spend very little time trying to figure out how they can be profitable. There are a whole host of ideas where, you can start off, I don't know if you're from a programming background, but find somebody from that background, build something online and scale slowly but organically. I think there's plenty of opportunity to do that. Funding, valuation metrics and stuff like that. It has become such a joke in our industry. Every second company is overvalued. It's a unicorn and all of that. I would in fact recommend, shying away from that and trying to build companies with the intention of making a profit.
Okay, but was there some belief, or did you have, or was it just that you had immense confidence in your product that you were able to launch it, or was it some sort of support system, or did you consult some people before starting out?
Well, a good advice I can give you is never pay a consultant. I think it's a cardinal crime. They rip you off and you very rarely get anything of value. There was no confidence. I've always been insecure as a person. I still am to the day. We were trying to solve a problem we faced. I was a trader before being a broker. As a trader dealing with the incumbent companies of the day, they charged as much as 0.5% on turnover as brokerage. They were very inefficient, not transparent at all. So we created a company to save that cost we were paying to brokers. And then everybody who came on board our platform was through word of mouth, because they said, you guys have created a platform now, let us also use it and save the money we are paying brokers as well. So we never thought like a corporation, but more as, an individual creating a solution for other individuals just like him.
Okay, so since we're on the subject of startups and finance, and we have the co-founder of Zerodha in-house, do you also see Zerodha possibly going public anytime in the future?
I don't think so. As a company, we've never done any marketing. We've never put out a single ad, be it digitally or physically or in a newspaper or on TV for that matter. So since we have no cost of acquisition, our clients come through word of mouth primarily. It wouldn't make much sense for us to raise capital, because then the question is, what do you do with the capital? Typically, companies raising capital spend a large portion of that towards acquiring client. So I don't think we will go public. Also, the ecosystem in India is not very favorable to a company which wants to go public. A lot has to change there from the government more than anybody. I'll give you an example. If, say, Simran and Anisha start a company today, if the company is making 100 rupees of profit and you want to go public at 1,000 rupee valuation, you would end up spending 60 rupees in accounting fees, book building fees, red tape around listing or IPOing in India. I don't think it's worth the hassle or the effort.
Okay, so now we know. So many people, including your brother, have called you a gifted trader. So do you personally believe that this is true? And what attracted you towards trading and towards the world of finance? And how did you get into it?
Yeah, so we are brothers, we have to say nice things about each other, at least publicly, right? So I'm sure you guys would do the same. But no, I don't think there is such a thing as being a gifted trader. It's about following a bunch of rules that you set for yourself. Discipline is strangely the most important thing when it comes to trading. Each person has a type. You are a certain type. A certain kind of trading mechanism will work for you. Put in the time to figure out what that is and then stick to the rules you've set for yourself. I don't think there is any such thing as a gifted trader. I think there is such a thing as a lucky trader, depending on what era you were born in and what market cycle you caught. But anybody can learn and be better.
That's very humble of you, in fact. So what attracted you towards trading and towards the world of finance?
Well, it has no ceiling. So trading is one of those job profiles where you do not need a prerequisite educational background. You don't need a significant corpus of money. Like tomorrow, if you decide to ditch college and, save 1 lakh rupees and try to become a trader, you can. And if you get a little bit of luck at the very beginning, you might end up doing very well. The fact that there was no minimum requirement, the fact that there was no ceiling, there's no hierarchy, there are no promotions, there are no managers and subordinates, all of that, right? It's very clean. You do well, you're able to buy companies that do well, you remain profitable and in turn grow and scale up. That I think is very attractive. Outside of that, I love the non-repetitive nature of trading. Nobody can predict the future. So every day when you come into work, something new happens and you have no inkling of what that day could be like. And that keeps things fairly exciting.
And that's great. So I'm going to take my example right now. I'm very hesitant when it comes to trading because as soon as real money is involved, I take a step back. And I'm in some ways, I'm also afraid to just jump right into it. So do you think the fear and uncertainty in the minds of people like me around the stock market is justified? And if not, why do you think people and generally our society feels that way?
Well, I hope the society stops feeling that way. That way I can make more brokerage income when you guys start trading. But I think there is a certain hindsight bias. People historically have lost money in the stock market. And the previous generation, your parents or your grandparents might have had the experience of, having a friend who lost a lot of money and it has kind of spread like that. The one killer in the equity markets is leverage. If you have 100 rupees and you buy equity worth 100 rupees, barely ever do you lose money. If you have a reasonable expectation of earning 10-20% from the market a year, there are multifold ways of being able to achieve that. What people often do is they have 100 rupees, they take leverage, buy equity worth 1,000 rupees or 500 rupees. And when you do that, your emotions are skewed, very hard to contain what you're doing or have any kind of a system that you can follow, and people lose that money very quickly. But to earn 10-15% a year pay low taxes on it. Equity trading is at 10% LTCG tax is what you pay in India, because the government really wants more people to be under this financial inclusion bucket. I don't think there are very many asset classes which can give you that. Real estate might have traditionally, but today when you look at real estate, in India, if you were to buy a home and rent it out, you never make more than 2-3%, hardly beating inflation. Bank deposit rates have fallen significantly. The government does not want you to buy gold because India does not have any gold. We end up importing everything we sell here, big fiscal deficit, lot of issues. The one thing that the government likes is taxed appropriately at a much lower rate than other asset classes, and where you can make 10-15% is equity. The big change during the pandemic, I think, is people have realized that not only is this a better asset class, but also it's totally liquid. You can take out your money on any given day, which you can't do with an asset class like real estate. So it is becoming a lot more popular than it has been historically, but still off a very small base. We have 140 crore people in the country. Only about 5 crore people file for income tax. Maybe a couple of crore people pay a reasonable amount of income tax. The amount of people who have direct or indirect exposure to financial markets in a way is only about 1.5-2%. That is terribly, a very, very small number. That number is 60-70% in the West. So plenty of scope, plenty of potential. You guys, I don't know when you graduate, but it's definitely something you should consider. A professional journey in fintech could be very fruitful considering where the industry is today and how small it is.
And very lucrative also, I'm supposing.
For some.
Okay.
Yeah.
We really want to be part of that sum.
Yeah.
So, do you think India has a culture of inherently saving money rather than investing it?
Historically, yeah. I mean, if you were to compare Indians and Chinese, the patriarchy and the concept of a family is a lot more prevalent here than, it is in the West. So we have been bigger savers than, say, America, for example. But I think it's changing. I think your generation is doing a great deal in changing that. You're spending more money than you're saving. It's a good thing for the country, and I hope you continue to do that. And saving too much money is not a good thing for the economy. Like if you were to earn a certain amount of value or extract something from the ecosystem, the economy, and put it away in a bank account or in, say, even worse, keep it in cash in your house and not use it, it's actually detrimental to the country. So it's not a bad thing that the saving rates are lower than what they used to be.
Okay, that's great, sir. So your story is an inspiration to all entrepreneurs, to all budding entrepreneurs. But I'm sure you get this a lot, that when somebody has an idea at an early age or when they're working, should they drop out of school as well and pursue that, or should they quit their job and take up entrepreneurship full time? Or do you think they can do it along with that? What do you have to say to people who are facing this dilemma?
Entrepreneurship is risky. If 100 people try, maybe like 20 people cut it, and because some companies can work and some cannot. So definitely not the advice, to go drop out of school or college or whatever. I think there is a lot that can be learned from a formal system of education, and people who can access pedagogy is flawed in many aspects. We spend 15 years teaching a kid to, get a job, make money, using archaic syllabus which should have long ago been changed. My big qualm here is we spend very little time training them on how to manage the money once they have a job. I think there's plenty that could be changed with our education system. But still, I would say to have that formal education, to have that background will come in handy at some point in time. And the one thing we don't realize is what you really learn in college and schools when you go is how to be with people, how to socialize, how to network, and that is very, very important in life. There are many ways to look at it in both directions. Like, I talk to my friends or I talk to people I meet at work, and they often talk about how they had the best times of their life while they were in college, and they did this and they did that, and the friendships last a lifetime. And I would never know how that feels because I didn't go through that experience. So you don't want to be in that position 10 years down the line. If you can give it 2 years now and finish it, I would recommend you to.
But I think I should say this to you. You didn't miss out much, because that's what our college life is now. Just talking to people and interaction through screens. So that's how everybody is going through college right now. So I don't think you missed out on much. Now it's time for the Uniline Power Question of the Week. So Ritesh Garg asks, as Zerodha has no marketing budget, then how do you manage to get the largest market share, beating all the established trading platforms?
Well, I think the key here is you need to have a good product. We take our revenue, we spend it on building a better product. We never want to be perceived as this large corporation which is out there only to turn a profit. We think of ourselves more as a community of traders trying to, build something for other traders. That differentiation, I think, is very important. And also the fact that, we've built a lot of credibility with the transparency at which we've operated over the last 11 years. That really helps. People kind of stick on and they recommend us to their friends.
So is this the kind of approach you'll be practicing? Because going forward, I mean, how do you plan to compete with these platforms who are aggressively marketing their product? And nowadays, there's this perception that even if you don't have a good product and if you market it and if you create demand, then you can actually sell it. So is this the kind of strategy you're going to take in the future?
Like I said earlier, I think the ecosystem is so small, right? Only about 1.5% of the country, accesses financial markets. What we are hoping is our competition goes and spends a lot of money, makes that 1.5% into 5-10%. And when they do, we spend the same amount of money on building a better product. And then hopefully those clients come to us after they have entered the stock markets.
Do you think this number is really low? Just 1.5% of the people access the markets?
Yeah, it is low. It is low. Relative to other economies in our geography, relative to the West, it is very low.
Why do you think? What is the reason for that?
Even access to banking to a large extent doesn't exist for a large portion of our population. I think we are a slowly evolving country. Publicly, we talk about ourselves like we're the superpower and this economy which has emerged. But when you look beyond one or two filters, I think, we're a vastly poor nation with very little innovation happening here. To a large extent, most of what we do here, which is considered innovative even today, is companies that we have replicated, which have done well in the West.
So I think we as a country really need to work on that, and hopefully the next generation we overcome this difficulty which India is facing. Mm-hmm. So now it's time for the DSP rapid fire round. So you'll have 5 seconds to give the answer. The answers have to be rapid. No thinking too much, just the first thing which pops in your head. Okay. So one investor that inspires you the most.
Indian or international?
Any investor. Somebody you follow.
Ray Dalio.
Okay. Online mode of meetings or offline?
Offline.
Are you sure offline? I heard that you work 18 hours a day. So
I don't. The problem is I work more not because I have to. If I was a little bit smarter, I could do exactly what I do today in 4 hours a day. But then I would be left with 14 free hours where I have nothing to do, and I would sit and think and make issues out of nothing. So I'd rather be busy than free. Hence, I work long.
That's a smart thing to do. So, top 2 things on your bucket list.
Travel Feels like it can't happen for a long time considering where we sit today. Travel, definitely. A lot more travel than usual. Second thing is to, focus on things which are not work, like focus on other things in life. Get better at a sport or music or something like that.
Okay. If not an entrepreneur, then what would you be?
I really enjoy psychology, so maybe something on those lines, yeah.
That's really interesting. So describe what success means to you in a word.
Well, nobody knows that answer. Definitely not me. I think,
Okay.
yeah, I'm doing a good job of pretending right now.
Your favorite cuisine?
I like Indian food. I like Southeast Asian food. I
Okay.
like spicy food. Yeah.
One word for the following. Just one word. Warren Buffett.
Predictable.
Okay. Indian education system.
Horrible.
Trading.
Fun.
Nitin Kamath sir.
Sweet.
Okay. So rank in order of your preference. Chess, rock climbing, bike riding, playing guitar.
Chess. I wish I could rock climb. Well, I can't. Pictures are deceptive. Bike riding happens once every 3 years or something. So again, no. I think chess, I enjoy watching people play good music. So chess in that.
Okay. If a movie was made on your life, who would play you?
Somebody, I hope.
I think Ranbir Kapoor should play you. Yeah, I really think so.
Okay.
So your favorite place for vacation since you want to travel the world?
What do I like? I like London.
Okay, good, great choice. On a scale of 1 to 10, rate financial knowledge amongst the youth.
Going up quickly, I must say. I would say 4, now maybe 6.
Okay, so hopefully in a few years we can get to 8.
Yeah.
So this brings us to the end of the rapid fire round. I must say you did fairly well. So now we're moving to the picture round. So in this we'll be showing you a picture. Take us back in that moment. Tell us what's happening and what are you feeling in this moment. So you have a picture on the screen right now. Please describe what's happening, how you're feeling.
Sure. I like that you're like promoting me so well and you're showing good pictures. Thank you for that, guys. But
So there are more. There are plenty more.
okay. Well, this is a food drive. We're kind of like serving, we have a bunch of restaurants. It's called Smallies. So we were kind of distributing food to a slum in Bangalore. What do I remember about this picture? The guy standing on my left, his name is Hegde. He's got COVID right now and is quite sick. Yeah, that.
Okay, so when I see a picture like that and when you're in that moment, when you're helping somebody, do you feel like you made it in life? Does it hit you in these moments?
No. You feel worse. I mean, if you go to places like that or many other situations like that, you more wonder what are you doing in life, Capitalism kind of draws this veil on our face where we choose to see what we want to see. And this never makes you feel successful or happy. It's always the opposite.
So it just sort of gives you a reality check, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, can we have the next picture, please? Yes, this is an interesting one.
This is old. Yeah, this is quite old. So when I was younger, there was a point in time where I thought I like riding bikes. So I bought a bike. I went for 2 Sunday morning rides where people ride a bike for 200 kilometers, have a coffee, and then go back home. And at the end of it, I was like, what was the point of that? And I think this was in that bubble territory. Yeah.
Okay, but this particular picture is from the Forbes 2016 edition, if I'm not wrong, and you were featured in the 30 under 30. So what was that moment like?
PR team, good job. Everybody who gets on a list like these is generally a factor of their PR team doing well.
But it's like many people really dream about it, that they want to feature in business magazines and they want a word to be spread around them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is a novelty attached to it, but it runs dry very quickly. Maybe the first few big business magazines, it makes a difference. So everything, from popularity to money to possessions, very quickly it becomes an ego game. You start off thinking, if I had A, B, C, D, E in life, I will be happy. When you get A, B, C, D, E, you're no longer happy, but you're looking at the person on your right and thinking he has F, G, and H. And that's a constant race. I don't think it's fulfilling at any level. It's just great PR.
Okay. Can we have the next picture, please?
Yeah, these are my parents and that's my brother. And I think I was a fairly naughty kid. It shows in my face.
Yeah, it does. Were you really mischievous? Did you get into trouble a lot?
Yeah, a lot. I still do, but a lot more back then, I think.
And I think you're one of us.
Yeah.
So this brings us to the end of the session. I do have a personal question though, and I feel I look at you and you have such a calm demeanor. Do you meditate or do you do some sort of yoga?
I have tried. I have attempted meditation many times in life. I last maybe 5 or 10 seconds before I'm distracted by something. So no, not at all. I think the demeanor is not essentially representative of what is going on in my head. I might be someone who's not very emotional optically, but I might be feeling like crap inside, but I look normal on the outside. So it doesn't really, help.
Those are the characteristics of an introvert. So are you an introvert?
Sometimes, it depends. Sometimes I'm an introvert, but there are occasions like once in a while when I'm a big extrovert.
Okay, that's great. So thank you so much, sir. It has indeed been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for being here. Now I'd like to hand over to Anisha.
Hope all of you have enjoyed this episode of FIC Charcha with Mr. Nikhil Kamath. We will be serving you with more such entertaining content in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. And don't forget to follow our Instagram page. Our next guest is the co-founder of Lava, a leading Indian multinational in the mobile handset industry with its presence in 13 countries. Yes, it's Mr. Hari Rai coming to our next episode of FIC Charcha. Till then, stay safe and stay healthy. This is your host Anisha Kalita signing off.
In the college time, I did whatever one could do apart from studies. I was the president students union of my college. I went to Korea, I went to Taiwan, I went to Japan and also China, and we partnered with a company who were doing the fixed wireless terminals and fixed wireless phones. They are now known as Vivo. In fact, Vivo name was given by me to them. So you would know that it's a $50 billion company today, together in terms of BBK Group.